Hey y'all, so normally I like to put my whole trip video in one. However, the museum about the dictatorship in Chile was so significant to where I felt like it wouldn't do justice if I put it all in one video. So this in particular is to concentrate on that. So this time is that I had friends. There's another Horizon intern in Chile, in Santiago in particular, and her name is Sarah, and so she actually accompanies me on this journey. Accompaniment, that's the word. She accompanies me on this journey to learn more about her context essentially, and it's kind of interesting because both of us are in countries where there was a dictatorship. However, Argentina's was only 8 years to where Chile was 20 years, and so the effect of the dictatorship is much different. The effect that it had on the church is significantly different, and so to kind of learn that and for that to unravel in front of me, aside from just her storytelling and explanation through a lot of this museum, I was just absolutely amazed. Some of the realities that people faced, especially being someone who is in a country now where we fear fascism, so there's a lot to be said about that. Y'all, so today we're gonna head over to a museum that's gonna talk about the dictatorship in Chile. I'm excited. All right, so we made it to the museum finally, and we'll see what we got. So yeah, we started off the day. We went to a commute through the city. We got to the museum, and the first thing we see at the museum is this open lobby area, and from my understanding, there was like a world treaty or a world justice committee made in order to investigate deeper a lot of the really horrific things that happen in multiple countries. And so there's actually this really beautiful world map that's all made out of photographs of different people, of different realities, otra vez, and on the bottom are these frames with the countries that are participating, the years they participated in, and the damage that has been done to their nation. And it's amazing because as you follow this around, you end up to this cross, this metal cross, and we didn't really get to enjoy that too much because there was a group of people in front of it at the first time, but coming back down and seeing that after this whole museum was just like, psh. She is. I want y'all to really look at this image and tell me that we don't see this in the United States all the time by our police officers. So as we went through this lobby and we went past the beautiful world map, there then was these all of the significant memorial sites for the victims of the dictatorship that are all across Chile. So there's this photo and then there's a beautiful description. This is a list of all the memorials for the victims of the dictatorship in Chile. Can you give me a recap of the Plaza Grimaldi?
This is the park that is, I want to say, like around a mile from my church. Yeah, it was a former torture and interrogation center of the secret police under the dictatorship. Actually, a member of the Yelch, the Lutheran Church, was detained there and disappeared there. But that place is really important because today it's like a monument of memory and to the resistance of the people who were held there and to what they experienced. In the 90s, they were trying to turn it into condos. There was some like shady business with some like high up government official had like sold it for $1 to like somebody in his family, and they were gonna like make it into real estate. So people from my church and from communities surrounding and people whose family members had gone through this place said absolutely not. and they came together and amazingly successfully, after a lot of advocacy, yes, were successfully able to get the land turned into what they call a park for peace, so a monument to what happened there. And so it's a really heavy place. It's also really beautiful.
Then we got upstairs, and the first part of the museum is like a minute by hour timeline of the military coup. And it had me shook. I was shook. I was almost mortified, because for someone to have to say it was at 8:10 a.m. where we heard the troops rolling down the street. It was approximately 12:40 when they bombed the presidential palacio. And I immediately thought of 9/11, because actually the military coup here happened on 9/11 in 1973, and there was bombings, and it was horrific. And so as a New Yorker, that was a little triggering, but it was worth it, of course. I just couldn't imagine. I could not imagine. And as we continue to go through the museum, there was then a space for children, and the effect that it had on children, the children who lost their lives, the children who lost their family, their parents. There was an American that was standing next to me who was, I guess, talking to maybe his family, and he was explaining one of the things where the child said, "I fear the thing that killed mommy." It was something else, I will say that. And as we went through, and you can see the dolls that were left, you can see the notes that parents left each other, and the families that were destroyed. During this museum, I struggled a little bit with my own placement in Argentina, and not because I don't love Argentina or the church I serve, but when I went to El Salvador and I got to meet with the bishop of the Lutheran Church of El Salvador, they were able to really proclaim and testify their Lutheran presence during the Civil War. And in Chile, it was very obvious that this was also a part of their culture as well. Whereas in Argentina, I think that was one of the first questions I asked was, what role did the Lutheran Church play during the dictatorship? And they were kind of like, we didn't really have a place. Like we were silent. And that kind of hurt me. Like, I'm not from here, right? Like, I have no reason to feel hurt. But I did for a second. It was almost disappointing, and I don't want to assume that I had even like an expectation for them. I just feel like when I've met the Lutheran Church, especially outside of the United States, they've been called to action, and they act. And I was hoping for more of that in my experience, which I didn't necessarily get. All right, and can you tell me a little bit about Helmet Friends?
Yes, Helmut Friends was a bishop here in the Chilean Lutheran Church. He was from Germany, and he came here, and he was incredibly committed to human rights and the cause of justice here. He helped start what they call it the Comité Pro Paz, which then turned into the Vicaría de la Solidaridad, which is more associated now with the Catholic Church. Yeah, in times of really intense upheaval and repression, he advocated for the people who were being disappeared and tortured and for their families, and he helped shelter people. He was an extremely important and prophetic voice, and the church actually split in 74, supposedly, well, because of some of his work. There was a branch that said no, the church has to be neutral, and they were more aligned with, well, power brokers in in the government. And Bishop Friends is famous for saying the church can never be neutral.
The church can never be neutral.
La iglesia no puede ser neutral. Yeah, he was also known as like the Red Bishop, el Obispo Rojo. And there's a plaque to him in the Parque por la Paz.
Qué bueno.
Yeah.
And, you know, when Sarah speaks on the separation of the two churches, it makes sense because there are going to be people that are always scared when it comes to revolution. And there's people that, unfortunately, in our Christian tradition, side with the oppressors. And that's one of the realities that we face as a Christian nation. Nation being like the body of Christians, not necessarily our country. There was one area in particular that really stuck out to me, and that was about I'm calling it the printing press. But it talked about the use of media and how the government tried to silence the media so many times, and people were using these printing machines to get out their anti-dictatorship propaganda, right? Like, how else do you combat fascist propaganda, right? You gotta have something to contrast that. And of course, the Lutheran to me, the first thing I think of was like Martin Luther, of course, because he used social media. But that was because I just took Bishop Eaton's class, so that's still stuck in my head. But then I thought of also how we're doing #resist, you know, in the United States, and how we're using our social media to bring the attention to the resistance and to shine a light of justice in our country, which makes me very proud. And it's also very frightening because I'm looking at a country that has been through a dictatorship for 20 years and the way they were combating dictatorship, and this should not be happening still in 2017. So my final question to you is, you are now an international vicar in a church that is grounded in justice, which is something that we may not always see in the United States. We may not feel that way about our Lutheran identity. However, that is very obvious in other nations as Lutherans. So now that you are living that and you are experiencing that, you are experiencing a completely unique church, right? How has that influenced your ministry? How has that influenced your time as a vicar? And how do you see that becoming part of or growing in the work that you do already?
I feel like in some ways it's like being here and being grounded in the particular congregation that I'm in that like has been a prophetic voice for justice and was at such a crucial time and said like we won't be neutral. In a way has like given me permission like to dig deeper into some of my convictions about things that are going on in the United States, for example, and to like stand a little bit more like without reservations to stand in that and say like yes, no, like this is, and in a way that phrase, like the church cannot be neutral, like, and I think, God, I wish I could remember the whole quote, like, or it like ceases to be church, right? Like, or like living out the gospel, like authentically, has become kind of like a refrain for me in like how I think about how I preach, or how, not that I need to like be making a political statement every time I'm in the pulpit, but that like yes, like actually like the gospel is political.
Yes.
And so like I can't, and it like can never be not. And so like I'm still struggling to figure out a way to articulate that to like people, maybe like folks in the States who have And I guess like what you were saying, like there is a very strong current of thought that like church is a place to not talk about politics or to be, you know, just to like be pastoral, which means not challenging or something. I don't know, it's helped to ground my like my approach. Yeah, that's yeah, I'm just gonna stop there for that.
As we went through the museum, you know, they took us piece by piece through the actions of the government, the disappearance of thousands of people, the exile of thousands of people as well. There was another map that showed all the countries that took in Chilean refugees, which is really powerful to say, like, thank you in that way, right? Like, their names are on this huge map. And Cuba, Mozambique was one of them. I don't think many people recognize that, like, refugees go to Africa, right? They're not just giving us refugees. MAGA. This overall was an incredible experience. It was a wonderfully done museum. And it was also shameful. It was shameful as an American to be there because I know that our government helped funded this coup as well as the coup of many other nations, not only in Latin America, but in the world. And it's ironic now, right? Like, that everything's happening to us and it's like the tables are turning and, you know, we go through this moment of like, no one understands this, but it's like, all y'all understand it because all y'all been through it because we did it. And I hate that. I'm so thankful that I really got to see that. And I'm thankful that, you know, I had Sarah there to also intertwine the religious component to it because I don't think I would have the same effect on me, and more so because I needed to be reminded of our call. I needed to be reminded that even though I'm away, I'm still very much present. I can still be active back home, and that's something I needed to hear personally. In regards to the last question that I asked Sarah, you know, I think I feel very similar, whereas, you know, it was a reminder to me that we are a church of justice and it's okay if there's division, because regardless of what that division is, if you are on the side of justice, if you are on the side of truth, you're all right. And I think that's what really matters most, especially when we're looking at ourselves as Christians. We can't be afraid to rock the boat. We can't be afraid to sit here and say, no, what you're saying or what you're doing is wrong because it violates the humanity of people. No, that's not what Jesus taught us. No, that's not what we're called to do. No, no, in this case, your opinion may in fact be wrong. It is not an alternative fact, it is just wrong. And I think once we get over that hump of feeling like we can't talk to people about justice and about the beliefs of Christ, I think once we get over that hump, we'll be in such a better place. And not just, you know, tweeting about it and not just writing it on our Facebook statuses, but going in and preaching that damn good news. How about that? And truthfully speaking, I feel like many of us are doing that right now. I feel like the Lutherans that I follow, the pastors, the lay people, they are all on that same vibe. And I hope that we can get that vibe out to others. I hope that we as a church can stay united and people will realize that, you know, the place that we're in right now is not the place we deserve to be in, and not the place that we need to stay in. And I hope that we can do that before it's too late. Although I would argue sometimes that it's already too late. After this museum visit, I very much look forward to going home. I look forward to being able to articulate these experiences in an evangelical way that will encourage others to seek out truth in both scripture and in the world. And that's really all that I can hope for at this point. And from the perspective of an American of color, I'm so sorry to all the nations that we have just butchered and destroyed and rebuilt and claimed it to be ours. And not just in a possessive, like territorial way, but in a way where we have spread capitalism and consumerism in a way that can be harmful and can cause, you know, environmental violence, social, economic violence, all forms of violence. I'm sorry we did that. And I wish that like my country wasn't built on trash, but it is what it is, right? And for everyone who decided to take the time to watch this video, I appreciate you. Thank you for, you know, coming with me on this journey. Y'all are A1.